Gur míle maithagh agus dús bhhalam arág bhfuil mé fear sauce event so live seo anocht in this very beautiful part of Ireland, and hello to all of those who are watching from further afield. The question posed for this session is a profound one, but it's not a new one. Neither is it one that is amenable to a single, simple remedy or solution. The introductory sketch, authored by the summer school organisers, suggests a number of dimensions to the issue: a democratic crisis which is Europe-wide, political disengagement, a pull to extremism, and an anti-politics culture. The financial crisis is cited as an aggravating factor in what the Council of Europe has described as public distrust in representative democracy. In the course of my remarks, I will try to address some of these issues and hopefully propose some positive conclusions. A healthy, credible democratic process of the people, by the people, for the people is the foundation stone of a healthy, diverse and equal society. It is the robustness of that democratic process and the quality of the society that it fosters which determines the trust or lack of trust felt by citizens. Put bluntly, if democracy or politics is run by an insider class and corrupted by cronyism, then it's little wonder that trust suffers. If society is divided between the haves and the have-nots, where the entitled few hold sway, little wonder that trust is shattered. And I believe that trust has been the casualty of a closed, corrupted political system which has failed collective interests and the collective good. It's probably impossible to identify that precise moment at which the people settled on a view of politics as corrupted. Perhaps that instinct lingered from partition and the foundation of the state, a consequence of the carnival of reaction which James Connolly predicted. What we do know is that for decades now, trust and confidence in politicians, the political class and the institutions of state has taken a battering. A succession of planning scandals, political scandals and tribunals of inquiry shed light on a system that was dominated by self-interest. As Mahon and Moriarty peeled back the layers of corruption, the public mind was confirmed in its view of low standards and in high places. It became a matter of public record. The toxic relationship between church and state also came into sharp focus, as Ryan, Murphy and others painfully told each harrowing chapter of institutional and sexual abuse of generations of Ireland's Irish children. The state failed our children, and that too became an acknowledged matter of record. Trust and confidence in the very institutions and people charged with upholding the public good were undermined. And more was to follow when the speculative property bubble burst. The much celebrated Celtic Tiger collapsed on the back of light touch regulation, unscrupulous lending and the cowboy antics of the Anglo moolah men. And as the economy entered crisis, so too did the lives of people across every class and divide in Irish society. The banks were bailed out and the austerity began. While families and workers coped with job loss, emigration and struggled to get by, they witnessed a political system that was largely unresponsive to their changed reality. Many of the very politicians who were the architects of this disaster sailed into the sunset, pension packages intact, as did retiring senior civil servants, some still in their prime. Special advisers remained special, so special that the new government of democratic revolution broke their own pay ceilings to accommodate them. The double standard was breathtaking. The economic crisis changed the lives of citizens, but not the political class. And the choices made by the current government have sent the strongest message that the burden of recession would fall on those least able to take the strain. The same government that bristles with indignation at the very idea of modest tax increases for the highest paid, or heaven forbid, a wealth tax, removed medical cards from thousands of people, including children with very severe disabilities. And to add insult to injury, they persist with the mantra that this is fair, making fair truly a four-letter word of Irish politics. So although the election of 2011 changed the faces of Cabinet, little else changed. The political class continue to serve the haves and pays at best lip service to the have-nots. For very many people, this was proof positive that the political class are all the same. Fine Gael and Labour took the baton from their Fianna Fáil predecessors, ditched their pre-election promises and carried on cutting. And I think it's impossible to overstate the damage this has done to trust, not just in government, but in the body politic as a whole. It is, however, outside of the economic arena, I believe, that it is most clear how little has changed, despite the succession of tribunals and scandals, recommendations and assurances that lessons had been learned. The same old behaviours were in evidence in May 2011, when the then Secretary-General of the Department of Justice, Mr Sean Aylward, attended UN hearings and flatly denied any state relationship with the Magdalene laundries. When the state forced Louise O'Keefe to the European courts to achieve justice and remedy for her abuse at the hands of her teacher. It's in evidence still as the state forces survivors of symphysiotomy to go to the UN for justice. And when the government equivocates, as it does to this day, on justice for the women and children who passed through, who died in and who were adopted from mother and baby homes, county homes and similar institutions. In each of these cases, the political class rally forces, united in their opposition to justice for victims and survivors of abuse. And the question arises, why does this happen? I don't believe for a moment that it is a reflection of individual callousness or malice. Far from it. It is rather an expression of a state instinct to minimise rather than to acknowledge. Perversely, it's an instinct to protect the state, whatever the consequences for citizens. When the then Garda Commissioner and his cheerleader, former Justice Minister Alan Shatter, publicly vented their disgust with Garda whistleblowers John Wilson and Maurice McCabe, unchallenged by An Taoiseach, the message was unmistakable. The system protects itself above all else. It remains the instinct of the political class to deny rather than to acknowledge. So in my view, the lack of trust in those that govern is self-inflicted. Political disengagement is not a flaw in the citizenry, but a reflection on a failed political system and culture. And when that prevailing culture is challenged, it's the instinct of the establishment to portray that challenge, and indeed those who challenge, as populist or opportunistic or even extremist. It's the system circling the wagons to protect the status quo and, more to the point, their own position of power. Certainly, the wilder extremes of commentary on my own party, Sinn Féin, are evidence of this. So what to do? How to rebuild trust in those that govern? Well, I think the first consideration is this. Who makes up the political class? Now, most politicians resent any assertion that they're part of what I term the political class or the establishment. It's taken to be an insult, marking them out from the man on the street. All such sensitivities to one side. Elected public office holders are the face of the political class, of the governing class, and that face remains overwhelmingly male, white, settled, middle class and middle-aged. And to focus just on one of these, the lack of gender balance, or more properly put, the absence of women, virtual absence of women from elected life, is to my mind a significant factor in the alienation of citizens from the political process. And this must change. The lack of diversity within elected life is more than just a cosmetic consideration, because immediately it means that politics is interpreted and understood as the domain of some to the exclusion of others. It sets the framework for what and who is considered and prioritised in public policy. If politicians are the face of democracy, then the permanent government, the civil service and the public service provide the heartbeat. The special advisors, spin doctors, consultants and lobbyists complete the lineup, and for the purposes of anatomical consistency, let's call them the teeth of the political class. And the collective mindset and culture of each element of this governing class must be transformed if there is to be any chance of trust enduring. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, in the first instance, that accountability must become a core value. That means volunteering information, answering questions voluntarily, understanding that the apparatus of state is there to serve the people. It places an onus on members of the Oireachtas to work diligently to hold the executive and agencies of the state to account without fear or favour. It also means the elected government must stop hiding behind the civil service. Some in Cabinet have brought passing the buck and political evasion to an art form. The civil service, indeed the public service agencies too, are there in a supporting role, not as an excuse for political inertia or as the fall guys or gals for bad political decisions. The interests of the state, as defined by the governing class, must no longer be allowed to trump the rights of citizens. Acknowledging wrongs done to citizens is always the right thing to do. Indeed, it is the hallmark of good governance. A good place to begin this cultural shift is for the government to confirm that the Commission of Inquiry into Mother and Baby Homes will be absolutely inclusive in its institutional scope, leaving no victim or survivor behind. Finally, I believe it's time that the electorate, the citizens, are offered a real political alternative to the Tweedledum, Tweedledee politics that has as an article of faith that no administration is possible without Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil. The dominance in government of these two parties, propped up by Labour and others, has stifled any real sense of political choice. It's possibly the main reason why so many believe that all politicians are the same. And it might also explain why some citizens don't really see the point in voting. We have had for some time now an ongoing debate on the need for reform. In fact, I don't know if Miriam Lord is still here, but I certainly read the exasperation in her colour piece today, where she said that we, in a circular motion almost, debate the same things again and again. Maybe that's a necessary thing. But in my view, notwithstanding the length of the debate and the urgent need for reform, the system still remains fundamentally resistant to change. So now is the time, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps taking our cue from the profound political and democratic changes in the North, to deliver that reform. Gurmila Mahagav Galer.